Welcome back to The Bulwark Goes to Hollywood. My name is Sonny Bunch. I'm culture editor at The Bulwark. And I'm very pleased to be joined today by Aaron Reynolds. Aaron Reynolds is the Webby Award-winning author of Effin, a comic strip pairing intricate artwork with mundane daily frustrations read by over 500,000 people every day. His first book, Effin, A Field Guide to Identification, hit bookstores in 2019. And for 7 whole days, was the best-selling book by any Canadian author not named Margaret Atwood. Prior to writing Effin as his full-time gig, Aaron was a creative director for a podcast network, a software trainer for Apple, and a Santa Claus photographer at the Worst Mall in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. Did I get that right? Am I was that close enough? Mississauga. Ah, dang. Yeah. Sorry, apologies to the Mississaugans out there. Thank you very much for being on the show, Aaron. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
So the reason I have you on today is because I want to talk to you about something I have been fascinated by for a long time and know nothing about. So there might be a lot of terrible, awful questions here because I am entering this topic with almost no prior knowledge. But the reason I am having you on is because I want to talk about convention life. I want to talk about the economics of conventions and what it's like, especially now post-COVID, how it is. So for full context here, you were just telling me you are on a run of like 5 straight weekends at conventions. You were just at San Diego Comic-Con, which is, arguably the biggest comic convention in the world.
And utterly exhausting. Utterly exhausting.
So let's talk. What is convention life like for you, and what is the actual economics of it? I don't understand how it works.
Yeah. Well, so it really depends on where you are in the firmament of celebrity, what your convention experience is going to be like. I'm firmly down at the bottom of the D list. I was so for a recent show in Niagara Falls, I was on the poster, which was a big step up for me, but I was below a reproduction of the car from the Munsters. So,
okay.
That's for, just for scale. That's where I'm at.
Not the original car from the
Munsters,
no,
a reproduction of it.
Gotcha.
And,
okay.
And you can't even picture that car in your head. I can't picture it in my head. Anyways, I'm less famous than that. The thing for me is I actually got into cons because I was trying to put together a book tour for a book that didn't have... I had a lot of support from my publisher, but I didn't have book tour support because I'm not Stephen King.
Right.
And I was trying to figure out a way to get city to city in a way that would pay for itself, so I could go, sign a bunch of books and do promo for the book. And what I found was that I could make it work with Comic Cons because there's always a Comic Con every weekend in some city, and depending on the con, they'll either fly me there, or they'll pay for part of my travel, or they won't, but I'll make enough money at the show that it won't matter, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So give you a picture of how the money aspect of it works on the tour. A show like Des Moines Comic Con, which I had a lot of fun at. Des Moines Comic Con is a small show, so they pay my travel to get me there to appear at the show. And San Diego Comic-Con is a huge show, and they don't pay my travel, and I paid to have a table at that show. Mm-hmm. And that table was the most expensive table I've ever paid for in my life. Mm-hmm. And so you're always doing this sort of this math of if I'm paying for this table and a hotel and a flight, how many books do I have to sell to make this worthwhile? And can I make that work? And for San Diego, our break-even point was $12,000. We had to do $12,000 in sales to break even on that show, which was absurd. But I kind of wanted to do it because I wanted to do San Diego Comic-Con. I probably wouldn't have done it if I didn't have some support and some help from some other people who wanted me there. But yeah, that's kind of it. So a big show like Toronto Fan Expo Canada in Toronto, the table is $600, and which is a very reasonable amount of money. And I live in Toronto, so that's an easy show for me to go do. Right. And I did a show recently in Denver where it was a very big show, and they were like, we don't have any budget to fly you out for this show, but we will give you the table. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll take that. And so it all all depends on the show what the costs are going to be, and then I order in a ton of books from my publisher, and I bring in some other merchandise, hopefully some high profit margin merchandise like pins and prints, which because books are great, but I get them at half of cover price from my publisher, and then I sell them for cover price. So there's you can only make so much on that
big.
And they're big. Oh my God, they weigh so much. Next time I'm going to write a paperback.
Well, what are the logistics actually like on something like this? I mean, do you ship stuff ahead of time? Do you just go to the UPS store and all right, I'm going to get 6 boxes of postcards, prints, books, etc. here?
Even more. What I tend to do is, I'm in Canada. I live in Toronto, and for a show in the United States, I can't really bring a lot of merchandise across the border. There's import regulations, and all kinds of stuff like that. And especially if I bring it in my luggage, they're gonna check. I'm on a list now. I'm a guy who does business across the border, quote unquote, and so I have my publisher send books to the venue ahead of time, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I either ship from we have a small shipping warehouse in Ottawa where we keep a bunch of things like pins, and I either ship a bunch of stuff from there, or in the case of prints, I usually find a local printer and have them do the prints and then pick them up when I get to town.
Oh, that's nice. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. And sometimes that can be disastrous, but most of the time that works out.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the difference between a smaller convention and a bigger convention. We talked a little bit over DM a few months back about going to some smaller conventions and you being surprised at how successful it was for you.
Yes.
So because you would expect okay, well, San Diego is going to have the most people, so that's obviously going to be the big draw, but not necessarily, right?
Right. Well, because San Diego has the most people and also has the most other stuff there. So there's the most opportunity for you to get lost or overlooked or just totally missed if I don't do my signage right, or if I have a lousy position on the floor, like my table's not in a good traffic area or something like that. And so bigger shows can be worse. In fact, the worst show that I ever did was one of the biggest ones. I did a show in Pittsburgh called Steel City Con that had terrible traffic flow. And so they had a really great celebrity roster. And that's part of why I went. They had a Peter Weller and Ronnie Cox talking RoboCop panel. And I was like, I want to be at that show. And apparently at one point they did a stunt thing where Peter Weller punched Ronnie Cox and Ronnie Cox went through a fake glass window, on the stage as a gag. And so I was like, I kind of want to leave my own table and go see that. But the thing was that because of the way they had everything laid out, all the crowd stayed around the celebrity area and never came to the area with us lowly artists. And so it was a show with 100,000 people there, and it would go a whole hour without seeing anybody walk down the aisle. And that show was disastrously terrible. But on the other hand, I did a show in Fairbanks, Alaska, which was a very I don't want to say a small attendance number. The show was packed, but it was a small venue with a small number of guests and vendors. And it was, at the time, it was the most profitable show I'd ever done. And part of that was because the town was just really ready for a con. They had never had one before, which is actually part of the larger picture business side of cons. There's a couple of guys that, the thing is, while I do a lot of cons, I deal generally with 3 different con organizers who organize multiple cons. And one of them, his specialty is finding a city that really needs a Comic-Con, and putting a Comic-Con there and seeing if it succeeds, giving it 4 or 5 years to see if he can build something out of it. And so, a small show can be really great, or a small show can just be small. And the thing is, the small shows tend to know that and tend to pay more of the cost of getting you there if they want you there, because then at a small show, I'm a draw, and at a big show, I'm just one more person on that list,
Yeah.
So I might be a draw, but I'm not a Chris Hemsworth draw, and I'm not a.
Don't sell yourself short. Don't sell. You've got that God bod.
Maybe I'm a Liam Hemsworth draw. Maybe.
Well, let me. I'm curious. I'm curious how you define being a draw, because I mean, look, in Fairbanks, I don't know what Fairbanks, Alaska is like. I've never been to Fairbanks, Alaska. I don't want to judge.
Cold. It's cold.
Fairbanks, Alaska, but it's hard. I swear, I'm not trying to sound dismissive. Like, I would kill for 500,000 readers of everything I did on a daily basis, absolutely. But like in Fairbanks, are people like, yes, I love effing birds, I'm coming to see Aaron, this is why I'm here? Or is it like, here's like, you're at the convention, look at this cool stuff that I do, it's funny, I've got these great postcards, I've got literally one right in front of my face to remind me of what I deal with every day. It's a nice little color picture of it's a yellow finch of some sort, and it just says on it, "I am unsure as to why I should give a fuck about your opinion," because that's how I feel all the time. But
yeah, I feel like that one was made just for you.
It feels like it was me, but like. So my question for you is like, how do you judge? What is being a draw at a convention like this?
Right. And so the thing is, like, Fairbanks is a really good example, because I was at Fairbanks specifically because there were two very vocal people in the community who were hounding the con organizer to invite me, which was great. But then once I got there, most of the people that I met had no idea who I was. And they would, exactly like you say, they would come by and they would see the postcard and they'd be, oh, I need this, and then they would take home an armload of things, which was, very, very gratifying to me, who had to bring all that stuff to Fairbanks, Alaska. Because like the number one rule is like, you don't want to take anything home. Sell out halfway through Sunday and don't take anything home. And so I actually, the funniest thing for me about San Diego Comic-Con is it's the show where I've met the most people who specifically came to see me. Because that's not like, I mean, it happens, but it doesn't happen as much as, it doesn't happen as much as it does for like the guests who are at the top of the poster, And so, it's a lot of discovery for me. And that's why these shows are valuable. And that's why they work in lieu of a book tour, because it's a place where, what's a good example? Denver had 70,000 people come through that venue. And so I made a lot of new friends in Denver, the weekend after that, I did Montreal Comic-Con, 63,000 people came through the venue, and I made a lot of new friends in Montreal. So, that's really what it is. Like, there are going to be some people who come because they know who I am, but generally it's going to be like 80% new, totally new people who don't know who I am. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. How was Comic-Con for you? Did you hit your break even?
Oh yeah, we did. We made a profit, which I didn't expect to. The thing with it was I wasn't going to go do that show by myself. I went with some guys who do that show fairly regularly, and usually what they do is they bring in a celebrity to their table for part of the day. They're guys who do things like they do variant covers of comic books, and then they have the artist do signing at the table for a couple of the days or something like that. And I was like, I was really gun shy because the table at that show cost $3,500 for the kind of table that we had there. But that's the kind of table you need if you're going to get seen. That's like for a nice corner table at the end of an aisle. And so they already had the table, and they wanted to bring me in as the person, signing stuff at the table. And then we did an exclusive pin set, and like we ended up manufacturing like a ridiculous number of pins. And but we did fine. They said that they're always chasing break even, and that they try to use it as a big promotion for themselves during the year. And that made a lot of sense to me. And so going in with the idea of, we're going to chase breaking even, and then coming out with a profit was actually really heartening. I was like, I'm going to come back to this super expensive show. In fact, next time we're going to spend a lot more money and do it better. The thing about what we did is we had a nice corner booth, and we just had some signage and some tables. And when I looked at, the entire vibe of San Diego Comic-Con is big, like there was a 7-foot tall Tamagotchi on the floor of San Diego Comic-Con. And so I was just like, I need to do something a lot more visually interesting, a lot more intense, because the thing that I think at that show stopped more people from coming to see me was that my table was boring. My table was a table with some merchandise with some guy at it signing stuff. And the people who were across from me, little friends of printmaking, who are fucking hilarious. They have a beautiful screen printed flag that says Milwaukee sucks that was like just hung over their the table, and I loved it. But they had actually printed walls out of paper that and made their booth into something that looked like a store that you were walking into by just printing walls that they hung. And I was like, yeah, like why we had so much space, why didn't we even think to do something like that? And so next year we're not cloning their booth, but we're definitely using that as a jumping off point for like how to make something a lot more visually interesting and a lot more attractive to people, so we can try to do a lot better than break even.
Yeah, you can have like a standee Effin bird.
Yeah, exactly.
Pose with your favorite bird, or come up with your own word bubble.
Yeah, I usually come along with like an 8-foot owl. That's like a pop-up banner. But I changed all my signage for this show, and I think for the better. It's nice, colorful new signage, and it matched the pin set that I was selling, which was very, like, we definitely wanted to sell as many of those pin sets as we could, because they were. I did an art project earlier this year at nft.bs, which is a domain I'm very proud of, where I drew the same bird 54 times, but with different hats. And anyways, we were selling these little hexagon-shaped pins with the same bird but wearing different hats. That's all say "fuck NFTs," and so I was very proud of my San Diego Comic-Con exclusive.
That's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about pre-COVID and post-COVID convention life. Because, I mean, obviously, things shut down for a little while in 2020. They started ramping back up in 2021, and it feels like stuff's getting more or less back to normal, or not. I mean, I'm curious. What was life like before COVID, and what was it like kind of during, and what's it like now?
Yeah. So there was a definite... there was a definite period where, there was a time when we had nothing. And then the coming back period was weird. The late 2021, like, shows starting to open up was this real gamut of shows that were small and like tightly controlled and like very like show vaccination status or negative tests and wear masks the whole time, and shows that were just like not that at all. And it's really has depended entirely on the venue and the city. And I think that attendance to all of them, while it's getting better and better, is still low because people are a little skittish. People don't want to be out there in huge crowds. And I mean, I get it. At San Diego, which was a very good crowd. It just wasn't, a pre-pandemic level crowd. And it was a show where it was show a negative test or show vaccination status to get into the building, and wear masks the whole time. And I mean, I know at least 10 people who caught COVID at that show. And so, I mean, that's just going to be, it's a place where you go where there's lots of people.
Yep.
And so I think
you're
the
close
show
together, and
exactly. And you're talking right in each other's faces in a loud environment, and I think that that's just the reality of these shows, is that, like, if you have at-risk family members, you probably shouldn't go to one right now. You should probably wait until, I don't know. Like, I was going to say you should wait until this is over, but I don't know that that's a thing that's happening. So I think that you should just be cautious, and you should always, be realistic about what happens when large groups of people get together. But like, it's also interesting to see the fan reaction and the guest reaction, because some shows don't have any requirements at all, and there are a lot of guests and a lot of fans who find that more stressful and then won't come out to it, if that makes sense. Because like, sure. If it's like, I think that the way San Diego did with the requirement of either vaccination status or a negative test ahead of time through some app that's some third party thing, I think that, like, that's about as, I think that's kind of the ideal, just like, hey, just making sure that people check themselves before they come is like, that's all you can ask. But then some shows that were a lot more strict seem to have better attendance. So, not better attendance because San Diego Comic-Con is the biggest one, but had more close to pre-COVID attendance, if that makes sense.
When you say stricter than vaccination or negative test, what is?
Well, so that's sense? Like it would be showing vaccination status only, and vaccination status shown and QR coded on the way into the building every day.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool. Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. I spend a lot of time on the internet basically saying, look, movie theaters are more or less safe. You know, you like this, it's a thing. But at the same time, I also know people who were 100% more likely to attend, even like when COVID was raging before vaccinations were, kind of widely available, we're still more likely to attend when masks were required, when there was still the spaced out seating, et cetera, et cetera. Which I like. I get. I understand. People are worried for good reason. Bad disease. Nobody wants to get it.
But I had it early, and it sucks.
It's not great. It's not great.
It's not a fun experience.
But one thing you had mentioned that is that even before COVID, there was like a whole season of convention crud, right? Like this is like, it's like kids at camp, right? Like you're gonna end up, somebody's gonna get something, and
that's actually a very that was a common refrain of when we started doing shows with masks as things started to come back. It was like, yeah, but I didn't get that weird cold that everybody gets after the con, and I was like, oh yeah, I didn't get it either. That's great. It was very refreshing to not get that. And so there definitely were some people who were like, maybe I should just always wear a mask to a show, even if we, end up out of a pandemic, and that's, it's a great big building with 50,000 or 100,000 people in it. Somebody's going to bring something into that. Somebody's got a kid that's gone to school and brought something home, or, whatever else.
Yes, I'm with two in school myself. I'm aware of all of these fun things. Let me ask, in terms of your professional balance, when you're looking at convention. First of all, how many conventions a year do you go to? On average?
Yeah, I try not to do more than 2 a month because that's a lot. And I did I did one every weekend for 5 weeks, which was a stupid decision, and I shouldn't do it ever again. But it was part of that was I'm still fulfilling commitments to shows from pre-pandemic, and they just, when they all line up in a row, it's like, fine, I'm going to fly from one to the other. But there's sort of like, there's work-life balance, and I know guys who can work while they're at shows, because the thing is, for especially for comics artists at smaller publishers, even at the larger publishers, they don't get paid a ton. There's not a lot of money in I don't want to, if I say some specific comics, people know what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to say any specific comics, but they're smaller publishers. They don't pay great. It's not an industry that, has a ton of money until you get to the movie and TV side. And so the thing is, like, they're doing the shows because that's a primary income for them, because they can, they can make more money selling original sketches and stuff like that than they can, drawing the books themselves. But they have to continue working on the books. And so, like, I know guys that I've talked to that get up at like 4 a.m. because they have 2 pages to finish and then come out and do the show. And like, that's wild to me. And I don't think I could do that. Like, I find the shows exhausting enough as it is. So I don't think I could put the pedal down that far and also work at the show. And so part of me trying to stick to 2 a month or less is that I need time I write a daily comic. So, I have to do the daily comic. And part of my horrible, my horrible gauntlet, right, of the last 6 weeks or so was that I had the deadline to submit all of the comics for my 2024 page a day calendar. So like a whole year worth of comics was 3 weeks ago, but it was in the middle of me doing all these shows back to back to back to back. And so I was sort of really digging to get all those comics done. And so, the nice thing for me right now is that I can take a little break from writing, which is nice. I can take a little break from making stuff, but it's hard, and it's hard to find the balance, because also, I have 3 kids. I don't want to be on the road all the time. I want to hang out with my kids. I have a nice house that I would like to spend some time in because, you know, it costs a lot of money. So, things like that. And so, it's hard to figure out what the right balance is. And I think every person is going to find their own balance, because I think some people like really just like thrive on the sort of the chaos of these shows. And to be fair, that chaos is a lot of fun. And you start making these little like family units at these shows, and a bunch of people that I met because I got randomly invited to a party at Winnipeg Comic Con have like become a little surrogate, con family. So we're always happy when we run into each other. But what's great is that we introduce people to whoever we met at the last show, and we make the group a little bit bigger every time. And so, I'm looking forward to Fan Expo in Toronto, because I know that there's like a dozen people that I'm going to see there that I haven't seen since Denver. And so, it's nice to go hang out with them again. And so like I can see, especially for somebody who doesn't have kids, that this becomes like can also be like a huge social, outlet.
Sure.
Because there are so many I got invited to the greatest. Some guys in Montreal bought an old Hells Angels nightclub and turned it into their comics studio, and then they had like a party there after Montreal Comic Con one night. And it was just like, it was the greatest, just to hang out with a bunch of weird artists in a former Hells Angels nightclub.
Yeah, I was I was curious what the after show scene is like. Is it just a bunch of artists, comic artists, industry folks getting together back at a bar or restaurant, or
a bunch of
hanging out?
Weird nerds in like the hotel lobby, or like we try to find especially that's I'm very thankful to have found this little group of people, because they're always looking for something to do, and there's some instigators in the group who will there's my friend Heather is notorious for climbing on statues in different cities around the world. And so, if there's that bull statue outside of the restaurant, Heather's going to be riding the bull statue. So, stuff like that.
Well, you mentioned around the world. Now that you've done San Diego, where in the world would Aaron Reynolds want to go?
Oh.
Now, what's like on the bucket list of conventions?
So I turned down a show in Angoulême, France, because I was like, why the hell do I would love to go to France, but like, what does France want with me? And that was before I found out that I'd sold a shit ton of books in France. And I was like, oh man, now I feel really bad about saying no. And so it's like, how do I very nicely, apologize and say, can I still say yes to next time?
I was sick. I was worried about COVID.
I didn't understand.
I'm better now.
I didn't understand that I'm popular in France, because part of that too is my French is really like, I speak Canadian French, which is already a strike against me in France, but it's also like rusty high school Canadian French. So I'm sure that trying to hold a conversation with me in French is maddening for anyone who cares about the language, but I can make myself understood. That I really want to go do that show, especially because I know some people who went to it and said it was absolutely fantastic. The biggest show in the world is in Japan, and I would love to go to that one. Although that really feels like a show I would want to go just to attend rather than to be at a table at. Because one of the things is, like, I didn't really get to experience San Diego Comic Con. I got to experience what it's like to be on the other side of the table at San Diego Comic Con and watch the whole con pass me. And so, I would have liked to have, been a visitor to the show at some point. But, what can you do? I changed what I do for a living. So I'm not really a con attendee anymore. And actually, I'm really excited to go back to, I did last year in November, a show in England called Thought Bubble, which was like just the greatest little show, because it's like, I don't want to say it's snooty, but it's super picky about who gets in. And there's not a
selective.
There's not a Funko Pop in sight. There's no licensed anything there. There's like hardly anything related to Marvel or DC. It literally is small press and like independent creators, and like it's invigorating. Like it's great that was a show where I definitely abandoned my own table for half an hour and just walked the room because it was just so exciting. And I did get to meet Sean Phillips at that show, which was a big deal to me because I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know.
Oh man, you should read the comic book Criminal. Any of Criminal. It's so great. It's just like noirish, crime. It's so terrific. Him and Ed Brubaker. Brubaker's the writer. Phillips is the artist. And you know what you should read if you're going to read one thing by him? Read Pulp. It's a great, short, wonderful thing. And when I met him, all I could get out of was just express my extreme love for Pulp. And of course, he did not have a copy of Pulp there that I could buy and get signed. So I was like, but yeah, that was a great show, and I really liked it, and I'm looking forward to doing that one again in November.
Cool. Yeah, that does sound like a fun show. Ed Brubaker, I recognize. Sean Phillips, I'm so removed from
that's
the
okay.
world of comic books at this point in my life.
I gave you something to read, and it's really good.
I appreciate that.
Read it.
I appreciate that.
Pulp is like an ex-cowboy. It's a guy in the 1940s writing cowboy novels, except it turns out he's really writing his own story because he was a notorious outlaw, like 50 years before.
Yeah.
It's really terrific. And then there's Nazis and a bunch of other stuff. It's great.
I mean, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Cowboys and Nazis.
And Nazis. Yep. And crime.
That's it.
Yeah.
I have a question here, and if you don't want to talk about this, because I'm sure you get this a fair amount, but what happened when Britney Spears Instagrammed your product? Because I feel like this is like one of these weird worlds colliding moments. When I saw that happen, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah,
what's going on?
I got a lot of text messages, and they were like, do you follow Britney Spears on Instagram? And I was like, I don't. Why? What happened? And they're like, well, she posted about you. I was like, really? And it was this like strange moment of like, Britney Spears has a conception that I'm a human being that exists. That's weird, right? That's really weird. It was great. I did get an email from my American publisher that was like, hey, can you think of anything you did last week? Because you sold a lot of books last week. And I was like, oh, that was Britney Spears. She did that. And it was like, it like drove Amazon sold out of books that week. And they're pretty good at stock levels and ordering. So, it was wild, and we did sell a lot of books, but we didn't like sell, it wasn't like it was Christmas, and I was selling Christmas levels of books. It was just really, really good. And I think that, that's what's like fascinating to me about the whole idea of like influencers and, all it takes is like a big celebrity to like name check your thing. It's like, I mean, that helps. It certainly helps. And I'm not saying it was nothing or not valuable, because it was super valuable. It definitely it paid. My oldest kid is going to university in the fall, and I definitely need these royalties. They're very, very helpful for paying for tuition. But it's not like, it wasn't like life-changing. It wasn't a life-changing moment. I got, I probably got an extra 10,000 followers out of it, which was great.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's, and actually I got a lot of followers on my personal account on Instagram, which was hilarious because I post weird garbage to my personal account, and she tagged my personal account in the post, and I went from like 800 followers to like 3,000 followers on my personal account, which was hilarious. And I don't know what these people are expecting from me. I expect them to fall off any day now, because I'm posting pictures of at San Diego, we had this little somebody gave me a little rubber ghost that's like this squishy children's toy thing that, I don't know, it comes from Japan that people like, and he immediately fell on the ground and was covered in dirty, lint and dirt from the ground because he was all white. So I put him on my table, and I put a little speech balloon beside him that said, "Hello, I am Gross Ghost." And then people touched him all weekend, and he kept getting grayer and more disgusting. And so I was just documenting, like, here's Gross Ghost's evolution over the course of the weekend. So, I mean, that's what you get from my personal Instagram. So
Okay, so tell me about what happened with the Red Power Ranger in Des Moines.
Yeah, so Des Moines Comic-Con, I had a great time at that show. They had done the most ridiculous bit of promotion, which was they did a set of Pogs out of some Des Moines Des Moines related things, and then the con's mascot, which was a flying cow, and then the Red Power Ranger, Austin St. John, and then there was a pog of me. So like that's kind of where we're at with this show. Like I'm like, I don't know, I was like billed like 4th or 5th on the website, which was pretty great. It was the Red Power Ranger, and then like Kel Mitchell, and then somebody from some anime voice actors, and then me. And so anyways, these pogs are really great, but the night before the show, the Red Power Ranger is arrested in an FBI, operation, gathering up people who defrauded the American government's like COVID payroll, protection program. And so they announced that he was unable to appear at the show due to unforeseen personal commitments, which made me laugh until I wanted to cry. But then I started kidnapping the Red Power Ranger Pogs, and I had a white acrylic marker and a black Sharpie. And I just I Googled images of the Hamburglar, and then I started turning his Power Ranger uniform into a black and white striped jailhouse, like old school jailhouse uniform. And that was very exciting, and it got very it started going around the con that I was doing it, and people were like, will you sell me one of those Power Rangers pogs? And I was like, well, I don't think I should do that, but if you want to like buy one of my books or something like that, I will happily draw you a Power Rangers pog. Bring me a Power Rangers pog and buy my book. Let's go. And then I ended up sitting down at dinner beside who I later found out was like his appearance manager. And she was like, some jerk at this show is defacing the pogs and putting him in jail. So I was like, do I tell her that was me, or should I just keep eating my dinner?
Well, I mean, did you? Which
I did.
Which option,
I owned
which
it.
adventure did you choose?
I owned up to it. I was like, yeah, that was me.
Yeah. I mean, that's wild. That is wild. Did he ever make it? Did he make it back to the show for any of the?
I think that the organizers are mad at him.
Wow.
So I don't know that he's invited to any shows right now. He has not appeared at any shows that I've been at. And I've been at a bunch of shows with Power Rangers recently. There's across the aisle from me at San Diego was a Power Ranger. Walter. What's Walter's last name? Oh, I feel really bad. I was not a Power Rangers person, so
me neither.
I'm exactly the wrong age for Power Rangers. But gotta say, unlike some Power Rangers, Walter had great taste in music, and the music he was blasting on his little boombox was just terrific, and I enjoyed it all show. Unlike the Green Power Ranger, who I don't know likes Venga Boys, and that was just like I couldn't take that for a whole show.
No, you don't. You don't need that. You don't need that in your life. Yeah, awesome. So I always like to close. These interviews by asking if there's anything I should have asked. If there's anything you think people should know about your job, your life, convention life, the business of this side of things.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think people should know?
I was thinking that that how the finances all change when you get really famous. Because I've had a few conversations about it. Because I've ended up, talking to lots of con organizers over the last, year or so. And I found it fascinating what it's like for like an A-list celebrity to come to one of these shows. Because, generally they'll pay like travel and hotel and all that stuff for them. But they, in many cases, will not pay a fee. And instead will guarantee that they'll make a certain amount of money on photo ops and autographs. So imagine that you are, somebody actually gave me a great example of a smaller show where they brought in a relatively big name, and he did not make they guaranteed that he would do $80,000 in autographs over the course of the weekend, and he did like 70,000. And so they had to pay him out $10,000 out of the box office to top it up. And so I armed with that information, I started asking every con organizer I know, like who is the most expensive person you've ever given a guarantee to? And I did hear that there was a Star Wars actor that commanded $2 million for a weekend. Whoa. That was their minimum. And so like, and I was like, wow, can you actually sign $2 million worth of autographs and take $2 million worth of photographs with somebody in a weekend? And I mean, apparently you can. But the guy I was talking to was like, yeah, we were trying to book him for that, knowing that we would probably pay him out at least part of that amount, but it was going to be worth it for having him on the poster, you know,
sure.
that he was there. And so like, I was like, yeah, okay.
$2 million. Let me, I assume you don't want to give me a name or you would have already, but are we talking original?
Yeah, original
trilogy. Okay. All right.
They told me that they couldn't get that guy. And so they got somebody from the new trilogy for for 6 figures instead of 7. So, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's like the scale of it kind of blows my mind. But having had a photo op, like I went at Niagara Falls, that show where I was Bill Below the Monsters coach. I was super excited because Ponch and John from Chips were there. I was like, wow, Larry Wilcox and Eric Estrada. Like, let's go do this photo op. I never do photo ops. And they had the original, somebody had done a restoration of one of the original Kawasaki's and done it up in the Chips colors and everything. And so it was a photo op with Ponch and John and the motorcycle. And like, really, that was like a very like, you got in, you said hi, everybody posed, the picture was done, and I think they were doing a picture every 30 seconds or something like that. And so, and then if you go and get an autograph from them afterwards, they get an extra, these guys got like an extra $50 for their autograph on it afterwards. So I paid like $150 for the picture, and then I paid $50 for each of their signatures. And so I was like, well, that was $250, and they were doing that every 30 seconds. So, that can add up.
I guess, I mean, you can, if still $2 million. Oof.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Actually, and I met a guy who told me about the guys who used to own one of the biggest shows that sold it because they made more money just on their photo op business. And so now they travel to all the different shows to do the photos part of it, for those shows, because that was the most lucrative part of the business for them. And it's like, that makes sense. There's a lot of money in that. I mean,
that makes sense.
Yeah. But like the 4 Hobbits, I can't imagine what it cost for at all the Fan Expo shows. There's 4 Hobbits doing a reunion, and I was like,
I saw that. Yeah, I was like, God, that. I mean, that's also just a big time commitment for those guys who are like working actors, like who are,
Well, that's it. And you know what? And part of that, and part of the interesting thing is that like often the shows will have a when you're making these agreements with shows, when you're like an A-lister, often it'll be like an organizer who does like 10 or 12 or 15 shows, and they'll say, we'd like you to commit to doing like 75% of these. It's never a 100%, but then they announce them for 100%, and then they cancel, due to, unforeseen circumstances or whatever. Mm-hmm. They cancel at like 10 or 20% of them. Ming Na just canceled at Fan Expo in Toronto, for example. But it's like, it's really wild to me, like that they got so many of the Hobbits for so many shows. Cause I know that, I feel bad. I've forgotten his name, but he's on Moonhaven now. So I figured he'd be doing like Moonhaven promo and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that like him appearing at these shows is part of that, is that like with the panels and everything, he gets to talk about his new show, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like, yeah. So I was talking to Brian O'Halloran from Clerks. I ended up in Denver. I went cowboy shirt shopping with Brian O'Halloran from Clerks, which is like there's like an only at Comic-Con kind of thing. But he was saying that there was one show that Kevin Smith couldn't do because they're doing all the shows to promote Clerks 3.
Sure.
And there was one show that Kevin Smith couldn't do, and so the organizer of the show like canceled the other 4 guys because it's like it's Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes and Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson, and I forget the Trevor guy. What's Trevor? Anyways, he's yeah.
Well, I mean, but I feel like, see, that's a weird one though, because I feel like if you're a fan of Clerks, I feel like if you're a fan of Kevin Smith, you would also go to see those guys too,
right?
Like I almost feel like that's one of those ones.
But would you get the photo op with 4 of the guys and not Kevin Smith?
Maybe.
Because that's because they've got to figure out their minimum, right? They've got to figure out, are we going to pay out these guys because not enough people are doing the photo op. So it's like it's a fascinating business. I think it's truly fascinating, and like the celebrity side of it is really hard and like really weird and really like there's a lot of It's a lot of spreadsheets in there. A lot of spreadsheets for
I'm
what
sure.
nerds like, and then
a lot of demand curves.
yeah,
and,
exactly. And then what's your who do you put on the poster? I was talking to somebody who was mystified that a recent show had Weird Al appearing at it and didn't put Weird Al in the promos. It was but Weird Al is a draw. Weird Al is a big draw. So,
I mean, how much of that is contractual? How much of it is if I'm going to be at this show, you have to put me in the poster, or alternately, you cannot use my name to advertise it. Because I know this is in the movie business, for instance. Sometimes you will get an actor to be in a movie, and he'll do it for scale, and it'll be a quick scene or something. But part of that is you can't put him in the trailers, can't put him on the poster. It's it's not a Sylvester Stallone movie. It is, he just happens to be there as a nice little Easter egg.
Well, that's the story of why Steve McQueen's not in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, is because they couldn't agree to how his name would be displayed alongside Paul Newman's on the poster.
Yeah.
And there's the William Goldman tells the story of even trying to put the names across each other in an X, like bullet holes or something, and McQueen wasn't going for it and eventually pulled out of it.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I wonder how much of that is, just contractual.
I actually don't know any of that part. And that's a question that I will clearly ask people the next time, I'm at one of these shows. I know that I get asked sometimes if I'll do press, if I'm a guest at a show. I'll get hey, the day before the show, we want you, there's this radio station and this radio station, and can you just call into these two guys, and that's always I'm of course, will I go on the radio and talk about things that you can buy from me? Yes, but I'm not sure everybody wants to do that or is up for doing that. I think sometimes it's just enough to have their name on the poster. And I mean, some people who do these shows are doing it because it's really good money and they don't seem to be having a good time. There's a notorious older Star Trek actor who's he's kind of a big old grump at these shows, and he's just miserable. And if you run into him in the green room, he's like, "Who's getting my coffee?" Well, it's I mean, I'll get your coffee. I'm at the bottom of the poster, or I'm not on this poster, but it's fine. But I mean, and knowing that the money is really big, kind of explains why he does them. And he's a guy who he'll do a show one night, he'll do a Friday at one show, and then he'll get on a plane Saturday morning and go do Saturday afternoon at a different show, and it's a lot of money.
I mean, the money is, I'm shocked. I'm shocked by some of the numbers you're throwing around, but I guess I shouldn't be, because I see this sort of thing happen, folks doing tons and tons of shows, and you always hear stories about the guys who are kind of miserable, and you're like, well, why do it? But it makes sense now.
Why do you do it?
Makes sense.
Because $2 million. That's why.
I would do a lot of things that I hate for $2 million.
I would do NFTs for $2 million. I'm just going to say that right now.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people go to get your stuff? Not at a convention. Give me a website. If you a non-NFT website.
NFT.bs, my favorite. It took so much effort to register that URL. You can find Effin Birds on your social media platform of choice at Effin Birds, EFFIN Birds, and at effinbirds.com, which is where my weird merchandise store is. You can find me on a lot of stuff also at Aaron Reynolds. That's where, you'll find not only pictures of things like Gross Ghost, but also weird stuff I started making embroidered pullover shirts. Instead of a little alligator or a little man riding a horse, they have a small dog that's vomiting. And that's my new, fuck you to professionalism. That's my new garbage.
Vomiting dog shirts and Effin Birds postcards.
Dogvomit.shop.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much for being on the show. And if you're in town when Aaron is coming in for a convention, go say hi.
Come see me. Yeah.
Bulwark Goes to Hollywood. That will make me happy, and I'm sure it will make Aaron happy, and everyone will be happy, and you'll be happy. So that's good. Again, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. My name is Sonny Bunch. I'll be back next week with another episode of The Bulwark Goes to Hollywood. I'll see you guys then.
You loved Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now get to know her on Give Them Lala.
With her assistant, Jess.
Last night, Lisa wanted to clean out the fridge, and I was like, I can't lift anything. I'm not helping.
Number one, Lala was told she can't lift anything, you guys. So it's not like she's just like, I'm not lifting anything.
No, but I'm not helping. But even my friends know. I'll write you a check. I'll do some Venmo. I'll have something wired. I am not helping. I don't like it.
Give Them Lala. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.